You're listening to Soundside. I'm Paige Browning. In early October, film buffs around the region received some bittersweet news. The historic Egyptian Theater in Capitol Hill, which had been closed for repairs, would not reopen as a public theater. The Seattle International Film Festival decided to end its lease, saying it was a difficult decision, but it just wasn't financially feasible. This comes on the back of the closing of the Grand Illusion and AMC 10 theaters in the U District. In an era of streaming services and movie studio consolidations, what does it take to keep the independent theater scene thriving? To answer this question and more, we're joined by an illustrious panel of film experts. Beth Barrett is the artistic director at SIFF. Kenny Alhadeff is the owner of the Majestic Bay Theater in Ballard. And Chase Hutchinson is a freelance writer who covers movies and movie theaters for the Seattle Times. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Okay, Beth, let's start with you at SIFF.
Yeah.
SIFF has had ups and downs the last few years.
50 years.
50 years? Okay, we'll call it 50. You made layoffs earlier this year. How are things looking for SIFF now?
It's a complicated question. The landscape has changed so significantly over the last 5 years. The donor base is nervous. Sponsorship, they're nervous. This is not just film. This is across arts and cultural organizations across the country. Everyone is seeing a little bit more challenge in the traditional non-ticket funding, which puts a greater emphasis on ticket income to a nonprofit arts organization that shouldn't rely on ticket income to cover its costs. We're a mission-driven arts organization, and there's no way that we would be able to cover the cost of providing the same kinds of mission-driven films, events, mini festivals, education, festivals like Nifty, any of that without the support of contributed income. So this is why I'm saying it's complicated because it's not as easy as, well, if an Avengers movie comes out, everything is going to be fine. Because that's not the truth. And it's not the truth on the commercial level either. Like, commercial theaters across the country are closing. AMCs are closing, Regals, Cinemarks. The big companies are also contracting and trying to do more with less. The studios are also contracting the number of films they put out through the course of the year, the length,
giving you less options,
giving us less options, closing the windows for something like a film that is great and we could hang on to for 3 or 4 weeks. A company like Netflix is going to give it to a cinema maybe for a week, only if they have a relationship with them, and then it's going to go straight to streaming. So it's complicated. So right now, we're talking about all those different ways that we can continue to drive our mission forward, to keep connecting with our audiences, to keep engaging with people, to keep providing the level and diversity and complexity of films that we're showing, while also navigating a lot of really nuts and bolts kinds of things.
And you are not renewing the Egyptian lease, but we still have SIFF downtown, uptown, and within
the film center.
And the film center in Seattle Center. Yeah. Okay. Kenny, I want to ask you a similar question. In Ballard, the Majestic Bay Theater has 3 screens, but you are run completely independently. How are things going there?
Well, actually, they're going quite well under the barometer of what matters to us.
Okay.
Clearly, we are not a nonprofit, but I've been fortunate enough to be successful in business enough to build and have a theater on a historic site that the dream was to try to have one of the nation's finest neighborhood theaters. And that meant everything from cleanliness to the way the people are treated. My son-in-law, Jesse Plack, who's married to my daughter, Andy, has a deep passion for movies and a deep passion for community and social media. Since he's been the general manager, some things have happened that have really been exciting. He wanted to do this thing called Retro Night, where we would get a movie that hasn't probably been seen on a big screen for a long time. He did the first one, and There were like 90 people there. That was amazing. Well, just fast forward, I thought we might do one a month. We do 3 to 5 a month and we usually sell out 200 people. And they aren't all exactly the same, but they're people that want community. They want to see a movie and share it, because even if you know no one else in the theater, it is a shared human experience that we just cannot lose as a society. You know, films can take us to places we could never go and dream things we could never dream. And hopefully some of them are really well done and meaningful. But the physical experience of getting out of where you live and going to a place where there are other people who want to share what you are doing. And we have now seen this growing group of people. But it's been, I would say, for our dream, very, very successful.
And Chase, I want to look to you for a slightly wider view. We're hearing about what SIF has been going through, the model Majestic Bay has. You've been covering the local movie scene for a while, and this is a scene that includes a bunch of independent or small theaters. Near me, we've got Central Cinema, Northwest Film Forum, The Beacon, with some really unique deep-cut films there. What challenges are you seeing for smaller movie theaters?
I think the thing I would say, and that had jumped out from what other folks were saying, is that the model question is a big one. Do you want to be a nonprofit? There are some folks that have made that work and think that can be successful. There are other sources I've talked to that are a little skeptical as to whether that's the way forward, whether there's a lot of resources going towards executive compensation that doesn't need to. But when it comes to the broad scope of Seattle theaters, I think the biggest thing is building that relationship with an audience and getting that support. The example you gave of The Beacon a couple months ago, they had a very fascinating series of what I'm going to call body horror films, even though it was much more than that. It was Julia Descarnou's Titan. It was Claire Denis' Trouble Every Day. It was stuff you're not going to see everywhere else. And as far as I can tell, that resonates with a crowd, with a younger type of audience. I've talked with sources that find it's the letterbox crowd. It's the younger folks that are excited to come out and see things. And that's the audience that you're going to want to build a long-lasting relationship with. I think that's the biggest challenge going forward. It's not the only challenge. Everyone has done a very good job of speaking to some of those other big picture things. But yeah, it's finding ways to connect with people. It's building that base of support. And the only other thing I'll add, my colleague Margot, who came on not too long ago, she always tries to be and I agree with this, not the bringer of doom, and say everyone should support your local theaters. You should get memberships. You should go out with friends. You should engage in this communal experience. But there also has to be, on the flip side, things drawing people out, building that relationship, distinguishing yourself from the theaters. What can you see at this theater? What experience can you have here that you can't have anywhere else?
And Beth, on this note, Chase is talking about, SIF has been one of the organizations that local movie buffs or even the occasional viewer could count on to see films that aren't quite the blockbusters you're expecting at the bigger corporate chain theaters. As the artistic director, I'm curious, what are you looking for when you're deciding what to screen?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's interesting because what I've heard from everyone is the experience, the community, the belief in the mission, whether it's a for-profit or nonprofit. That belief in the magic of being in the movies is the thing that keeps us all going, is the thing that is, the economic model might look totally different for lots of people. The Beacon, they have, 45 seats? They're not as worried about necessarily, some other different parts. The Northwest Film Forum is primarily volunteer run. So there's a lot of really different ways to approach it. But artistically, what we're really trying to do at SIF is provide an incredible diversity of screenings. So if I even look at just the Uptown last night, we had If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. great film, not easy film, but really amazing performance. We had a really full house for Jafar Panahi's It Was Just an Accident, starting at the exact same time that we had a totally sold out big house in the Uptown for a film called Squeezy Jibs Makes a Movie, which is from internet sensation Squeezy Jibs, who decided to make a movie that is a cross between John Wick, Terminator, and Magic Mike. It is exactly what you're thinking it is.
There's a little something on the menu for each kind of viewer.
But I mean, there were 450 people there. The majority of them were young, and they were looking for that communal experience. They were looking to be together in the theater, meet their internet hero, who I had, met that night, and have this sort of experience. And I think, Chase, you're right, is the younger people are really looking to engage with film in a way that traditional art house audiences, which are traditionally older, it shifted. The pandemic shifted it a lot. And so what we're doing artistically is trying to find the films that will bring in that big, broad spectrum of people, from the 13-year-old chanting Squeezy to the 80-year-old who really wants to see the new Iranian title, because that's international film is their thing.
And Kenny, I'm wondering on this note, what is the draw for customers to come to the theater in the time when I could wait a few weeks and rent a movie at home?
So when we first opened, I was very naive, and I just thought everything will depend. We're going to do it really the right way, but it totally is going to depend on the movies, which are totally out of our control, because we can do everything we can beautifully.
Right.
And, we're not going to have Barbie all the time.
But it's not up to you to make the movies.
And what's on the screen is critical. It has to be. But at first I was fearful of doing anything that wasn't first run, because I wanted people to know this was a first run movie theater. And now what I want them to know is that we're here to hear what you want to see and do. I mean, when we do retro night, we do quizzes and we do events. And then at the end, I throw T-shirts out like I used to when we first opened. And not every time now, but talk about the history of the theater and thank them and engage them to make it part of theirs. So SIF has done this brilliantly. They're such a magnificent, important organization to remind everybody the power of film to humanity, not just special effects. And so we blend it. We need to be first run to have the quality and the facility we have. And the studios are very much more open as long as we are very, very diligent about communicating and working on it, to understand that to have the movie we have 4 weeks we have to have on a Wednesday night when 2 people might come where it is. Yeah. If we can take care of the economics, they're going to get more people to that movie if on Wednesday night I have 230 people that see the sign and maybe 20 of them come. So we've worked really hard with the studios to understand that we understand that you hold the cards. But if you will help us maximize our opportunity without hurting yours, ultimately it will help yours, because the desire to want to go there is stronger than just what's playing. If you do it, and easier said than done, but we see that.
And actually in Seattle, it's because there's the Majestic Bay, it's because there's the Beacon, it's because there's the Film Forum, it's because the Grand Illusion is doing pop-ups at all of those different places. The community, there are so many films out there. And the ability for filmmakers to find screens that are appropriate to their films, like Chase, you were talking about a body horror series, is perfect for the Beacon. Absolutely, 100%. Yes. That is the audience. They know their audience. They are supporting them. The audience is turning around and supporting them back. And the ecosystem that we have built in Seattle is crucial. Like, all of us play a crucial part in it, because none of us can be everything to everyone.
And there is, I just think as a theater goer myself, there is that romance of sitting in the chair. And Kenny, like you were talking about, the curtain goes up or the lights come down and you see the opening credits. There is such a feeling there that I don't get when I watch movies at home.
The thing I was going to say, and this is building off of something you said, Beth, I think I would be there with the 80-year-olds chanting Panahi. Mm-hmm. Not Squeezy, but Panahi.
Me too.
That was the Palme d'Or winning film. It's a very significant work, and having an ecosystem where that can get shown is valuable. But there is also the challenge of how do you preserve that ecosystem? And just to be then putting a little bit more of there are challenges ahead. There have been tough losses this year, and theaters laying people off. There's less capacity to bring that exciting programming in some ways, the repertory programming that people will come out for. It's not all doom and gloom. I'll take us even further out in Tacoma, the Grand Cinema. They purchased their building. That was critical for their longevity, because now they're not thinking next week, next month, could we be looking for a new home? It's not easy. They had to do a capital campaign. They had to really go out and pound the pavement and reach out to people. But people want to support these theaters. It just is not always easy to stabilize everything, especially as the market kind of shifts, as films become less available with the rise of streaming. There are multiple big streaming Netflix movies this year. There was Frankenstein, the Guillermo del Toro film. There was Train Dreams, which is a locally shot, breathtaking movie that you would think would be demanding to be seen in theaters, but it's often tricky to get them for the full runs that you would hope for.
And I want to ask you also, since we have a critic and a writer at the table who writes movies and writes about movies and movie houses, about the quality we're seeing, because as you all are talking about the films you decide to bring in, you can bring in more art house films that might have a niche crowd. But at the end of the day, I imagine, you want the Barbies and the Oppenheimers that are going to be some of the heavier hitters. For every surprise hit, like One Battle After Another, which I've yet to see, or Sinners, there are inevitably some box office bombs. You can't predict, like Tron, Ares, superhero movies, sometimes that just don't make it. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, are we in a lull when it comes to filmmaking, or is there something bigger afoot?
I will say at the end of every single year, there will be people that say filmmaking is dying. And I'll say, well, you should watch these 10 movies that I would say are significant. You should watch April, which SIFF played at their festival. You should watch Train Dreams. You should watch the new Kelly Reichardt film, The Mastermind.
Why is there a perception at the end of every year? And I want to hear from you all,
Some
too,
of it is grounded in...
that film has gotten worse that year, or
I think
decade.
Some of it is that the economics have shifted. I think the recent writers and actor strikes can't be dismissed because they were looking at the playing field and seeing an existential crisis where there is less pathways to getting films made. If there was Mark Duplass and Lynn Shelton who began making films in the region, if they were trying to get their start today, would they be able to do it in the same way? A lot of people feel like it's a lot harder to do that. And they were making great movies for adults about people dealing with their real lives that kind of vanish from the landscape in a lot of ways when there's less people willing to invest in that, when they're often going for quote-unquote more IP-centered filmmaking. I still think there is room for that mid-budget movie, but that's even bigger than any of us here, because that's about what are people investing in and what are people putting their resources behind. And I think that's where, even as there is great, exciting new voices each year and new films every year, it's hard. It's hard to get a movie made, no matter who you are.
We're talking about the climate of having a independent or small theater in Seattle. And I want to get to you, Beth, and you, Kenny, in a moment. Another big thing on the horizon of movie making is consolidating in the movie studio business, because fewer studios can mean less competition. And a cynical way of looking at that means less pressure to make really great A-list films. Are you worried about what happens when companies like Warner Brothers Discovery, Paramount, Skydance are trying to merge? Are mergers on your mind?
I mean, that's a great question, because one of the things that I think the mergers do is kind of hyper-focus studios in the wrong way, but can also provide a little bit more latitude. Like Warner Brothers took some big chances this year. Most of them paid off. Everyone's like, Ryan Coogler, really? What's going on with Sinners? Became just huge. Weapons was huge.
Just out of nowhere.
Just out of not out of nowhere. He's an amazing director.
Okay, you're right.
Out of nowhere.
But not the one that everyone expected to be the one at the top.
But one of the things that I think studios having such a focus on knowable, repeatable IP is that they are shortchanging themselves. And they're not taking the big risks. But what that is doing is opening up the field to a lot of new distributors. Roquet with Gus Van Sant's new film. A lot of, again, those like films for adults. They're dramas. They're a little bit harder. There's not a lot of superheroes in them. But as we're seeing, those superhero films, they are not always delivering.
The model's changing for what people want to see.
The model is changing, and mergers, I'm not sure is going to help the model change, but it may force some, other distributors, other filmmakers, other producers to look at a new model. And so that might not be the worst thing.
Okay. Kenny at Majestic Bay, what's your insight on this?
Well, it's really fascinating because, some people like opera and they go to the opera and they want to go to the opera house. Some people want to go to the symphony. Some people love jazz. Some people like funk. Some people like rap. And not too many of them like all of it and go to all those venues. The universality that everybody who wants to see a movie goes to a place that has movies. And there's more similarity in the sense of that. And so, for some of us, the huge 5 and 6 episodes of these superhero things, it's not what moves me inside, but it does move some people. And it is how we can listen and hear. And with the advent of the digital way that the films are prepared, more and more small creators can create really meaningful things with no special effects. And there is an audience for it. And if we can figure out how to expose the separateness that is there to unify it, and it's hard to balance all of those things about quality and people who love the simple sensitivity of lighting to be a character in a film, and the audacity to think we have the brain power to track something with them for a half an hour that's complex, as opposed to bombard us. And I'm not denigrating any kind of film. The beauty is it's all there to do, and it's how we can maybe do more crossing things over. And for us, what we have really realized is if we just wait for filmmakers, the big, huge commercial ones, to solve our issue, we are being victims of our own lack of ingenuity and sensitivity. There are brilliant pieces of film from the past and now, and we have been able now to do some beautiful films.
That's an interesting perspective. You're not at the whims of just what comes out in a given month or year.
No, but you have to balance it because it's that, sometimes pays a lot of the bills.
Yeah. I'm curious if there's a film you have seen recently that, as Kenny said, moved you or you enjoyed and would recommend. Don't have to think too hard. Just anything that... I know, Chase, you've mentioned some, so let's start with you.
I am going to go say Train Dreams again to apologize on being a broken record, but it's a pretty significant work. I think it's one of the best films of the year. It is, depending on when folks listen at this, playing at the Crest Cinema.
Okay.
And so I would want to say go see it there,
Train
both
Dreams.
as a representation of the state and of the best of the year.
Okay. Beth, you have one?
Oh, absolutely. Chloe Zhao's Hamnet. Unbelievable, visceral, just Jessie Buckley, outstanding.
Okay.
Yeah, it opens 11/26.
Excellent. All right. And Kenny?
I guess mine's a few years back, but it's so powerful to me, and that's Origins and what that film is about and what it says about race and the world. And oddly enough, I am a kid who grew up with Superman. And this Superman actually starts to be a combination of fabric of character and morals. And I was happy to see that it had that sense to it.
Okay. And finally, to you all, what will you be looking at as we move into 2026? Is there a factor? Is there something you're watching at the studios? Is it what are you looking for in the coming year?
We have 3 theaters, and one of them's pretty big, and the other 2 are not as big. But there's 24 hours in a day, and there's things we can do there, mainly film, but a one-person guitar player when it's not in the hours that would. How can we use our spaces, particularly when we're in part of a community, like part of Ballard, talking to people who would like to see what happened in that building? Because we say, there's really no other use for it. Well, they are rooms with seats for humans. So there's any use we can come together with and agree on, even though it's reverse sound. So you have to always amplify it if someone's going to do a short lecture. So
good point. Okay, but pivoting and thinking about
Yes.
other uses of space. Beth, what about you looking at as we move into a new year in a couple months?
Yeah, so I think in 2026, what I would really love to see is that sort of that level of cooperation with all of us who are looking at exhibition, who are looking at the arts and cultures, to say how can we support our audiences to know about us, to come visit us, to take a chance. You see a movie at the Majestic Bay and you're like, oh, I like going to the movies. Then, you will go to more movies. And we have to, I think we all got out of the habit for many years of doing things, of going to live shows, of going to movies, of going to museums. But that is what makes us who we are, is how we experience art. And how we experience art in movie theaters is in community, in the same room. And, we were at the Train Dreams screening at Civ Cinema downtown last week. And just to have all of those folks there and a bunch of crew from Eastern Washington, because it was shot outside of Spokane, was extraordinary, and everyone was having an experience. And so what I'm hoping in 2026 is that people can commit to having those experiences.
Chase, what about your final thoughts looking into 2026?
My final thought, I think, is probably going to be the most important one that I would be remiss if we didn't talk about this at least a little bit, is I'm going to be looking at how arts workers are doing. And I don't mean to bring the mood down, but it has been a tough year for the people that work at theaters, as it has been for many people working in the arts. But I'm going to be seeing how the programmers, the marketers, the projectionists, the staff are doing. I think if we don't acknowledge that any theater or arts organization lives and dies by the staff, we're missing out. I think that's the thing, of finding ways to listen to their voices, to hear what they need, to support them. That's the thing I'm going to be most looking at and listening for, about how they're doing after a tough year and what is a hopefully better 2026.
Okay. And that is Chase Hutchinson, a freelance writer who will be following this. He covers movies and movie theaters for the Seattle Times. Beth Barrett is the artistic director at SIF. And Kenny Al-Hadif is the owner of the Majestic Bay Theater in Ballard. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. By the way, this show is only possible because listeners support us. If you are able to give right now, check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.